So you were making an issue about Planned Parenthood, and you were telling me about Margaret Sanger.
Yeah.
You didn't finish.
Well, so she was a eugenicist. She believed only the good should procreate. She had a project that was called. See, I hate how YouTube does this, but I have no choice but to call it the N-word project. But it's not the slur; it was a slur, and the goal was to disseminate birth control and contraception, and trying to convince them not to have kids for those reasons. Now, there's a debate on the quotes from this woman because some of them are extremely egregious, and then the left claims they're not real quotes. So whatever, I'll leave that out of it, I suppose. But if the goal of Planned Parenthood started by this woman was to prevent black people from having kids, and to this day, you mentioned the white population is decreasing, but the black population is stagnant. It seems like her ideas to stop black people from having babies worked. And now you can look at 2006 data I pulled up that black women are 5 times more likely to have abortions than white women. And this is preventing black families and children from growing up. It sounds like these racists, and the Planned Parenthood is overtly, defended by the Democratic Party, which was the party of racists. They are still enacting policies to hurt black people.
Yeah.
So you said something that was very on the money, where you said having a bunch of kids that you can't afford.
Yeah, it's not the way to get out of poverty.
Is fucks you over. Doesn't help you.
Yeah.
Right. And it's interesting because, the conception against a lot of welfare is, poor black people have kids just to get welfare money.
Yeah. Welfare babies.
It's sort of,
yeah, you're right.
So it's sort of a contradictory argument because you're like, well, wait a minute. They're having kids just to get money, but also they're being aborted for what end? And also, because again, this is part of what is confusing too, because you'd say, wait a minute, why would the Democrats are trying to rely on more black votes. Why would the Democrats be aborting black babies? How does that make sense with that conspiracy theory?
This doesn't
make any sense.
The logic doesn't work.
Right. So I spent way too much time looking into Margaret Sanger yesterday.
Let's hear it though.
It's a huge fucking waste of time.
Was she black or white? I don't even know.
No, she's white. She's white.
So white progressive?
So she was progressive in the 1920s progressive sense.
Right. The eugenicsy kind of progressive way.
Yes. Which
Only
it's interesting because I
should
learned about the eugenics movement by doing this. If you were looking for an example of where the left has utterly failed, I think the eugenics movement is a better example than the prohibition.
Oh, you're right. You're right. That's an utter failure.
Right. That's it. And they were very connected too. They were very connected.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know, which is interesting. So Margaret Sanger is a eugenicist, definitely. But I don't think she's racist at all. I didn't see any evidence that she was actually racist.
Really?
Whatsoever. Yeah. So her big thing, well, this is what's interesting about her and what is kind of hard to wrap your brain around. In the 1920s, the eugenicist movement had a lot more sway and acceptance than the birth control movement. Okay.
Really?
People, yeah. Like there were 30 states that had some kind of form of eugenics law. Oh, let me be clear. When I say eugenics, I don't mean like racial eugenics. I mean, like, we don't want people that have low IQs that are like classified as legally retarded to procreate.
Right.
Yeah. It's not racial eugenics.
Right.
And so there were a bunch of states that had eugenics laws on the books.
Right.
Where they would actually sterilize or not allow people who had
mentally
low
retarded,
IQs or retarded, procreate,
wards
or
of the
especially
state, all kinds
right.
of
If there
shit.
was a state, if they were criminals, blah, 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 where they would sterilize some of these people.
Right.
But a lot of these states at the same time had anti-birth control laws. Like you couldn't, sell birth control devices.
Well, that's peculiar.
You couldn't talk. Yeah, it's very weird. You couldn't educate people on, basic birth control, sex ed stuff whatsoever. So it was like this really weird thing where, the eugenics movement in America in this time period was like way more accepted than the birth control movement. So, and this is why it's weird to talk about her. She was perceived a lot of being more radical in her time for being a birth control advocate, not for being into eugenics. And a lot of people say this. I don't think it's fair. A lot of people that are apologists for her say that she only adopted eugenics positions to sort of bolster, like she was looking for something to hitch the birth control wagon to. And so she hitched it to the eugenics movement. I think that happened, but she definitely did have weird eugenics positions that I'll get into. But she was like, she really did believe in birth control. And her big thing, when I was reading through some of her works, she was like a very feminist person who was like, people should be able to have sex for pleasure, not for procreation. You know, women should have control over their bodies. It should be up to the women to decide these things, blah, 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 blah. Like, this wasn't, a lot of people try to make it out like, oh, she's running around just being racist and trying to get rid of black people and Planned Parenthood's a conspiracy. It's like, no. She was like, all of her first stuff was in white neighborhoods and in white communities when she was trying to advocate for birth control. If she was some like racist person, she was doing this completely wrong. She was first arrested in 1916, Adam, for passing out pamphlets on birth control information. Okay.
Rebel.
She was arrested for passing out pamphlets on birth control information.
Yeah.
And you know where she was? You know what neighborhood she was in?
A white neighborhood.
It was the very, very black neighborhood.
Oh, it was?
Of Portland, Oregon.
Oh, yeah. That's not very black.
No.
They have like one black person in Portland, Oregon. Right.
So it's very apparent when you like read through her life, she was a true believer in birth control. This wasn't some sort of weird racial conspiracy at all. And I didn't see any evidence of her being racist. The thing that Tim was talking about, she had the quote N-word project, which I don't even know. I don't know if we're allowed to say it on YouTube, but that was just the word people used for black people back then, not the N-word, but there's the other N-word, the Spanish word for black.
Right.
And that project was to create basically they changed the top. It's funny, they changed from using birth control to Planned Parenthood because it had like a better it pulled better with people. Right?
Yeah. Family planning.
Right. Family planning was was the term they used. And so she opened this family planning place in Harlem. And the reason she didn't just do it on a whim. She didn't say, I hate black people. She did in conjunction with a famous black academic that we've talked about just last show, or the previous show, W.E.B. Du Bois.
Really?
Yes.
Aha, he's back in the game.
He's back in the game. And so, yeah, and like, because there was a thought, and this is probably true, that among a lot of black academics at the time that, black people having to care for a bunch of children that they couldn't afford was holding them back and holding them down. And so they were on board with birth control too. Not just abortions, obviously. Everyone focused on abortions. But a lot of this was, in a lot of her position, even though she was in favor of abortions, a lot of her position was preventative measures like condoms and the pill. I think they had some kind of version of the pill back then or something, or just teaching people the pull-out method or some other thing.
The pull-out method, yeah.
Right. So don't think she was racist. I haven't seen any evidence that she's racist whatsoever. But she did have very bizarre eugenics positions, which were, well, first of all, she was against people that were retarded having children at all. So she was against that. And there's this the weirdest thing that she supposedly advocated for. I'm annoyed. I couldn't find the source. I find lots of people referencing it, but I couldn't find the source to see what the hell she was talking about. Which was supposedly she wrote some kind of paper or article where she lays out a framework where people should have to get birth permits from the city to have a child.
Okay.
Which is fucking crazy.
That's a little extreme. You got to go to a bureaucrat to have your kid.
Yeah, it's totally fucking crazy. And I was like, and it's weird because in one of her books that I read part of, she says the exact opposite. She said she wants the decision to have a child to be up to the mother, not the state. And so I was like, well, what the fuck is this time?
That's
and
a little contradiction there.
Right. So I couldn't find the exact source. I've seen it referenced a bunch. I've seen the title of it a bunch of times. It's like licenses for parents or babies or something. And I'm like, that's fucking crazy. I've seen people claim to have the reproduction of it. But so she does have weirdo, freaky deaky eugenics views, and that's fine. Criticize her for that. I don't think she's racist. I didn't see any evidence of her being racist. And I don't see any evidence that she was running around trying to, that Planned Parenthood was started some conspiracy to get rid of black babies.
One question before we move on.
Yeah.
I'm curious if the assumption that having unplanned pregnancies would be detrimental to your financial future is correct or incorrect, because like I said, Latinos tend to have big families, and maybe that's good for their economic futures. I don't know.
Well, I guess it depends. It can go either way.
Yeah.
I think the big problem isn't just having a bunch of kids. I think it's having a bunch of kids
out of wedlock.
Out of wedlock.
Yeah.
Right. I think it's a combination of factors that really hurts you.
Yeah.
And also because it depends also what sort of, the attitude is. Because, I mean, if you have a bunch of kids and they all go on to get jobs that are,
that's what
they
I'm
make
thinking.
money.
Yeah,
right.
Of
Like that could end up being a boon instead of or something that hurts you. But if you have a bunch of kids and they sort of decide to bail on society, it's going to end up fucking you over. It's going to be a drain.
If you have 10 kids and they're all taught critical race theory and grow up to be super aggro against society,
right,
that's going to be bad for everyone.
It's actually funny because I was reading through some of the eugenics movement stuff from the 1920s. It was kind of a mixed bag. There were some that were racially motivated and some that weren't racially motivated. And the thing that the non-racially motivated eugenicists were operating under was the fear of idiocracy.
Well, that's a good thing to be afraid of.
They were like, I just think it's so funny. It's like the movie Idiocracy was what they're afraid of. They're like, listen, we're looking at the stats and stupid poor people have way more kids than smart rich people. And so we're going to have a society like 100 years in the future where everyone's fucking an idiot. Like that's literally what the 1920s eugenicists were operating under. And that's what they were trying to sort of advocate, what they're advocating for, which I find hilarious.
Yeah, I don't know if that's how it works.
It turned out not to be the way. Well, I don't know. It depends on who you ask.
I guess it is, yeah.
It turned out not to be the way it works, really.
Intelligence is somewhat heritable.
Yeah, obviously.
Right.
Though obviously intelligence is also increased generationally with education, health, yada, 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 yada.
What if you had like a total Albert Einstein have sex with someone with autism?
Then they'd be super smart. What do you mean? They'd be Elon Musk.
Well, I guess autism is not. Maybe someone mentally retarded.
You meet someone retarded, right. Yeah, I know. Maybe they'll even out. Who knows?
It'd be fun to do those experiments over generations and really figure it out.
Right. Though she did have a somewhat interestingly progressive, I guess, ironically use that word, view. A lot of people in the eugenics movement believed that poverty was linked to genetics, and she did not. She thought poverty is entirely because of environmental reasons, which is kind of interesting. Yeah. There you go. There's your Margaret Sanger facts.
Isn't poverty a result of environmental reasons, like you don't have any money?
Yeah, what do you mean? Of course. No, but she's like, as opposed to saying that, like, oh, if you're poor, like a lot of the eugenics people back then thought poor people are just going to birth like poor kids that are going to continue to be poor and stupid.
I mean,
as opposed to like, well, no, they're
a job. I mean, just
right. And she was like, well, no, if you give them an education, then they'll be able to pull themselves up by their bootstraps.
Yeah, that's good.
Any more? No, that was it.